The challenge that we have with writing is getting started. Like, how do I start? Where do I start? What do I do? How do you build a compelling case for what you are presenting as an important problem? There are 5 things that I say you must always have in the introduction section of a paper. Don't take people around the world with 2 paragraphs of statistics because you're not going to keep their attention. What is the big question that you are asking? This is the structure that I know works. After reading a lot of papers and writing a few myself, this is what I found to be very effective. One of the most common questions I get is on research proposals. And I spent some time on TikTok doing TikTok lives. And I've decided to make a snippet of one of the answers that I gave, a very extensive answer on how to write a research proposal. If you like this content, please let me know. Just leave a comment and I can share more of the material that I generate from my TikTok lives. If you would like for me to cross over and bring this content to YouTube Live, also please let me know. I need to submit my proposal. I don't know where to start. So I had a whole live on the proposal, but I think I missed you for that. And I said something about it yesterday. I'll say it again. I think a lot of people are in the proposal phase right now. The best way to think about your proposal, if you want to be able to get the most out of it, it's like the first 3 sections of your paper or your dissertation, but written in a compressed format, right? So the structure remains exactly the same as it would be for your dissertation. You have an introduction section, you have a literature review section, and you have a method section. And then what you do within this proposal, because things are a bit more condensed, is that you try to focus on the most important things. So the introduction section of your proposal is the same as the introduction section of your dissertation or indeed an academic paper. So there are 5 things that I say you must always have in the introduction section of a paper. And this is the structure that I know works. After reading a lot of papers and writing a few myself, this is what I found to be very effective. So the first paragraph, what is the problem and why is it relevant? So why should we care about it from a theoretical perspective? So what new explanations does it offer for a particular phenomenon? And then secondly, from a practical perspective, how are practitioners better off for knowing this knowledge? How is it going to inform, for example, policies or decision making in practice? So this is why you start by already telling us this is the problem. This is why it is important. Don't take people around the world with 2 paragraphs of statistics because you're not going to keep their attention. Tell them right away, this is the issue. This is why it's important. Then you have their attention. And then in the second paragraph, you're going to tell us what is the state of the art? What's the current state of knowledge on this particular issue, right? So where does the literature actually give us very useful information? Where are there shortcomings in the literature that we need to manage? So that's the second thing that you're going to have in the second paragraph. And depending on how new or widely studied a topic is, this is going to be long or short, and you might have few or lots of references in that particular section. After unpacking the current state of knowledge, what we know and the key shortcomings, you are going to follow up with telling us which part of these shortcomings are you addressing. So it's like the state of the art sometimes is a bit broad, and then you pick a specific thing or things that you will focus on. And I always recommend put a specific research question against that. So in your third paragraph, what is the grand tour? What is the big question that you are asking? And with some proposals, they might want you to then already concretely link that to aims and objectives. So say, these are the aims and objectives of the study, right? And so based on this research question, these are the different things that I'm going to achieve. Then you're done with that. After that, spend some time telling us about your method. So what sort of methodological approach are you going to adopt to address the research question that you just presented? And how can we be sure that the method fits the question? Because there are different types of methods and they're driven fundamentally by the question, right? So how and why questions, for example, we typically use qualitative approaches. And if the work is exploratory, then we are already expecting that you are doing a grounded theory approach, right? So you have to show that the methods you are picking fit the question, and you have to show why they fit by citing the relevant literature. And then after that, you are going to have to spend some time on saying something about your research logic. I just mentioned the grounded theory approach. So research logic simply means what is the relationship between my research and existing theory. Theory being explanations for phenomena that also help us to reasonably predict what could happen in the future regarding that particular phenomenon, right? So if theories are about why, they are about explaining things that we see, you have to tell us what your actual research does. Are you testing a particular theory? Are you elaborating? Are you refining a theory? Or are you even creating one? So that grounded approach where you say, we have this knowledge, it's not good. We have these theories, they are far from what is actually happening here. So we are going to have to build a theory from the ground up. And that's what I'm going to do. So always discuss the research logic, understand what it is, and make sure that you pin it down as early as possible. Things might change, but at least you must understand what the intention is in terms of what your work does and where it fits within the existing theory, right? And then your final paragraph is you just speculating on what the potential contributions would be, right? So if you specified a problem and why it was important, and you have identified a gap that you're going to address with your particular research question, how will the world be better off as a result of you having cracked that puzzle? What sort of opportunities do these explanations present for the state of knowledge and for research and also for practitioners? So this is all that you have as your introduction for the proposal. I have 2 YouTube videos that you can use to guide your process. So I have a video about how you write the introduction section, and I talk about the contents, what goes in an introduction. I talk about the structure, so these 5 things that I just presented, and then I talk about the processes for generating the information that you need in each of those paragraphs. So if you will take that and you will actually start writing, you already have a really good template. It's almost universal. So reading things across fields, this tends to be the structure that people follow. It works. And if it works, then we're not going to tinker with it because we have complex enough issues to deal with. And then another YouTube video that I have is one where I talk about what literature do you cite in the introduction. So how do you build a compelling case for what you are presenting as an important problem? And each of the 5 paragraphs that I just mentioned to you has very specific literature sources that you are expected to rely upon to build your case. So with these 2 videos, they're both very short. I think both of them are under 10 minutes. So for less than 20 minutes total watch time of my YouTube videos, you'll have a very good sense of what you need to do, why you need to do it, how you need to do it, and where you need to look, because the video on what literature to cite, I also give tips on what sort of sources you can find. For example, if you want to just explain or describe a gap, one of the good places to look is within literature review articles. Literature review articles are a great starting source for understanding a problem in broad terms, but also understanding what the issues are. So usually if you would cite a literature review article, one is enough, and then maybe a few of the other important papers in that field. So you don't have to do much. You don't have to cite 20 papers to show us that there's actually a case if you would pick literature review papers. But another source for identifying gaps is the discussion section of already written papers. So we all usually would be expected to say something about the limitations of our own work. So we always offer up ways in which people can improve on the knowledge that we just created. So literally we hand over gaps all the time in the limitation sections of our papers or the back end in the discussion. Any good paper in any good journal will have that. No publisher lets you get away with not specifying what your limitations are. So these 2 sources are a very good place to start. But if still they're not good enough, then I have the videos that talk about the literature reviews. So let's go to the literature review of your proposal. What do you need to do? It's a more condensed version of the literature review that you're actually going to do for the actual dissertation. So for that, I would say, for example, so this is a number that I'm just pulling out of a hat, but you have to find out what the expectations of your institution are. I would say find the 20 most important papers that you can discuss within that mini review. And then with my video on how to write a literature review, the same considerations apply, right? So what sort of structure do you adopt for your literature review? I give you some things to think about before you can determine what structure you're going to adopt. I also talk about the different ways that you can connect the different key variables of interest leading to a research framework. So all of that is there in that video. But then next to this video, I also have a video on how to find gaps in the literature, plus one truth to grasp. So this video, what it does is take people through the process of, first of all, developing a synthesized literature review, but also being able to identify gaps based on the literature that you have read. So this is also a very, very useful video. What are the 4 main high-level things that you look for to be able to say there is a gap in the literature? And within that video, one of the things that I start with, just to try to get people to be more comfortable with critiquing existing knowledge, is that we all know that existing research is flawed in some way. There's no such thing as perfect research, right? So knowing this should make you calm enough to to have that confidence to say, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to critique it, and these are the things that I'm going to take away from it. So don't be scared to critique existing research. We know it's flawed and we are always trying to improve it. So by reviewing the literature, you are identifying those shortcomings that if we would address them, we would have a better kind of knowledge. So it improves the state of knowledge. We don't care about quantity in academic research. We don't want as many papers out there. We want quality knowledge out there. And this is why we do the literature review, because we want to find that opportunity to make an improvement to the state of the literature, right? So I have 2 videos on the literature review section on my YouTube page, Dr. Noniji Extra. If you cross over, you can also sit through them and it's going to help you. I think the first one is a bit long, 17 minutes, but it's a really good video. It's my best performing video at the moment. Don't know if I've already surpassed 2,000 views on it. You know, not much compared to what I get with TikTok, but it's 2,000. That's great. That's something. That tells you something. And then that one on the ways to identify gaps, that's also very important. And then finally, Maputi, I have, is it 2 or 1? Maybe 1 methods video at the moment where I talk about how you can actually write a great method section. So if you're working with qualitative methods, that video is extremely useful because it's also taking you through the contents and structures of your method section and the processes for generating that, and also what sort of literature in some instances you will need to cite. So I have already created a wonderful package for you for going through that process. And if you struggle with getting started, then again, on my YouTube page, I have this video, how to write to think in 6 easy steps, or 6 steps, I don't know. But the point of it is that most times the challenge that we have with writing is getting started. Like, how do I start? Where do I start? What do I do? That video actually takes you through 6 very concrete steps for getting started. The first one being doing a brain dump. You will be surprised how much you already know that you didn't realize you knew. And you will also be surprised how much you don't know that you think you knew when you start doing brain dumps. Just write what is in your mind, right? So if you will start with the introduction based on the structure that I gave you, you first create a draft based on your current state of knowledge. And then you will start to see, oh, I'm actually not sure about those gaps. I'm actually not sure about this concept. I'm going to have to go and look it up. This gives you more structure going into the literature review section. So rather than doing a wide search, never knowing what you're looking for, the brain dumps allow you to identify which part of the haystack you want to focus on or need to focus on in order to be able to start making progress with your research process. So everything you need is already there. Just go over to Dr. Noniji Extra on YouTube, and the first 3 sections of your proposal are more than sufficiently taken care of. I have at least 6 or 7 videos that you should be able to draw on to get started, to structure your thoughts, to understand the processes involved, and to make the important decisions that are going to help you to make the progress that you need.